So I love how just 5 minutes into this episode of Mushoku Tensei, it pretty much puts to rest the whole controversy that spiraled out of control last week. And if this is your first time hearing about it, basically, it got so bad that the author of Mushoku Tensei, he had his words twisted, and hit pieces were put out on him by Anime News Network. Multiple hit pieces, by the way, in the span of just like 24 to 40 hours. And tried to basically slander him, saying so-and-so, that he supports all of Rudy's actions, all this type of stuff. And I like how just, 5 minutes into, this episode, we have this scene where Rudy talks about Julie, and literally he explains kind of how he feels about Julie. He literally says it here, that, she isn't, an actual slave or anything, and then she's his apprentice, and then after this little sequence of events, we see, how Zenoba actually views her as, like, a junior disciple, and it puts to rest all of the controversy from last week, but it's crazy how out of control it got. I mean, hell, even the author earlier today had to make a post saying that, I'll keep you posted, because he always talks about the episode when it airs. He just does little offer comments, like he talks about the episode as he's watching, and he literally said, by the way, today is also a story that's easy to burn, but please take care of me. Basically, the story and the events that, happens within this episode. Anyone that watches this episode can see where he's getting at, could easily be used as a hit piece against him, and it's crazy how the world works, that the author literally had to apologize and put his stance and all this just because of, once again, it's crazy how Anime News Network targeted him to that degree. But okay, I want to drop that. Let's talk about this episode, okay? Let's actually dive headfirst into episode 7, and I'm just gonna say that, this is a very fun episode. Like, it's hilarious. Like, if I wanted to be just point blank, it felt like it was only 5 minutes long, which sucks. It's a good thing, but it sucks, especially when you're straight up just enjoying yourself, because there was some funny stuff throughout this. Like, just seeing these two blame each other, like, for instance, seeing, just like them going at each other, bickering each other, throwing each other under the bus, trying to say, oh, it's not really my fault or whatever. Everything about, these two characters that are obviously the spotlight for this week's episode of Mushoku Tensei, it's funny. Like, there's a lot of funny things. Like, this whole segment with Rudy, and how he shows his relic, his holy relic. This man's enshrined, the stuff for Roxy, and the way the entire sequence is so outlandish and hilarious. It's just awe-inspiring, just how shameless Rudy can be in this moment. It's funny. Like, it's funny. I was sitting here dying and laughing when I was watching this sequence. And I mean, there's just a lot of funny moments and all that. Like, this whole scene at the end, just seeing, like, Fitz or Sylphy, putting, like, these, fake, markings all over their face to say they'll become permanent tattoos if you don't listen. Just all these little things that kind of happen throughout the episode. It's comedy gold. It's funny. And obviously comedy is subjective. It comes down to, how you feel about comedy or whatever. But it's just legit great. And in this scene as well, like, oh my goodness, this entire scene where Rudy gets really upset and he's like, did you destroy it? Are you making fun of me, Zenoba? And Zenoba is like really, really scared. And I love how this man is absolutely terrified. And like within this scene, if you look closely, you see Julie. She tries to escape. Like, she runs away. Like, she's like, I love it. I love it. There's nice little interactions like that throughout this episode, and legitimately, like, you have a scene here as well, where Julie's hiding behind Zenoba once again, because she's obviously a little bit frightened of Rudy. There's little things like this that's just, like, really interesting that's going on in the background. But, yeah, besides obviously the fun, the comedy, and all that, there is a lot of things to kind of discuss when it comes to the actual story progression, and I want to take a few moments to actually talk about something that would have easily been missed because it's so quick, it wasn't explained, but at the same time, it's kind of like the story is respecting your intelligence, the animators as well, and even though it most likely is a variety of things, that they had to cut things and couldn't explain it because it would mess with the runtime and the pacing of the episode, but I feel like they also respected the audience to kind of remember, and what I'm talking about is this little brief scene where Rudy is obviously beginning his fight with the two Doldia tribe sisters, And basically, you see these two, are about to initiate against Rudy. And Rudy shoots like this little smoke bomb at her. And if you could see closely, she was covering her mouth and she was about to probably say something. And if you don't remember, this is a very brief scene in Season 1, but we know that the Doldia tribe, these beast men and all that, they can actually stun lock you. We saw Rudy when he first was introduced to them, when, he was with Rudeus and Eris, and, he was saving those kids and all that they were able to imprison him because they were able to yell with their voice, silence him, and paralyze him where he couldn't move. And it's very clear that's what happened here. For instance, like, she was going to paralyze Rudy and Zenoba, and they were instantly going to have a win. But obviously, Rudy was aware of this, and he got rid of that issue right off the bat to where she couldn't do it, and then, he proceeded to actually win. Which explains why someone like Zenoba, why he lost to begin with, is because he is obviously incredibly strong, but even though he's incredibly strong, it's very clear thanks to the last episode and this episode, he's not someone that is very gifted with, let's say, fighting magic users. He definitely can be just straight up destroyed. And it's clear that, it doesn't matter how strong physically you are, if that voice hits your ears, it will petrify you pretty much and you can't do anything. And that's what happened to Zenoba. He wasn't able to fight back against it, and that's how he lost in the end. And since he's kind of an honorable individual, he just accepted it as it was. It's like he lost. He lost the duel, and that's how it was. So yeah, there's a lot to really take away by the way the fight is actually presented, but I do also want to take a moment to talk about why Rudy took such a drastic tone with, the two, Doldia tribe members, because the big thing about it is that he was a victim of bullying. We know he was bullied in his previous life. That was a big element of his character, of why he didn't want to leave the home or anything, and it took him a very long time to be able to kind of overcome that. And Roxy is an individual that helped him break out of his shell and be able to experience the world that it is right now within Mushoku Tensei. Roxy is his savior, and that is why he technically has her holy relic and worships it to a degree and created a cult, because he loves her a lot. She saved him, so to speak. And he doesn't like bullies. He doesn't like people that messes with his image of Roxy, anything like this. And so him taking this very hard stance and being very upset with the two Doldia tribe members makes a lot of sense, because he legitimately doesn't like what they probably did to Zenoba. For instance, bullying him. And that really irks him. It gets under his skin, which is why he decided to do what he did. Now, was his methods properly, like, the best thing to go about this? Like, did he do the right thing? I'm not going to get too deep into that, but the point of the matter is that Rudy obviously took matters into his own hands, literally, and he, straight up, he wanted to deal with this problem at the source. He wanted to basically, stop them from ever messing with anyone else within this school, and, he wanted to kind of lay it out straight, like, hey, you can't be breaking someone's belongings, figures, etc., this isn't right. And so he tried to basically correct their behavior, for they would no longer do anything like this in the, upcoming future. So I think it's a pretty interesting dynamic. It really dives into Rudy's early character and kind of why he did these things and all that, but once again, it's not kind of reiterated to the audience. It's more or less because of a few things, I would assume. It's because obviously if they would have put in the whole explanation and background to it, it would have ruined the pacing of the episode. But also, once again, in its own way, it's like the writers of the episode, not the actual author of the light novel and the web novel, but just, who wrote this episode out with the script, was just like, hopefully people are paying attention, they remember, and even if they don't remember, they might go back and rewatch the scenes, and then, they will remember this and be like, oh, this makes a lot more sense. So yeah, I do think that, all in all, it was for the best decision the way it was done, because it showcases kind of how Rudy is and his hard stance with certain elements within the story and why he does the things the way he does it. Now, another thing to talk about is Rudy's predicament with his ED. Okay, this is a subject, obviously, I can't skirt around and not talk about, because this episode also kind of presents it in the story, and even though obviously, some might say distasteful or whatever, it does say a few things about Rudy's character. Is that even though he did something very sleazy within this episode going after one of them, it does prove the fact that he cannot fix his ED through methods like what he did within this episode. It's not going to work for him, which shows that his problem really stems from just a very emotional moment with Eris that really damaged him, and then Sarah obviously damaged it even further. But the point of the matter is that this means that he needs to actually build a relationship with someone. Like, he needs to build a long-term relationship and get a bond of trust with them for him to probably even fix this issue to begin with. It stems in his mind, mentally, and it's not something that's going to be easily overcome by just, I want to have a fun time with you, or so to speak. So, yeah, there is a lot going on here that shows that Rudy isn't going to have to resort to those desperate attempts to be able to overcome ED. So yeah, that is an element that this episode obviously presented that, was very brief, but it did want to point that out, that that is not the correct answer, and not how he's going to be able to solve anything. But with all of that, let's talk about Rudy and Fitz, and kind of the dynamic between the two throughout the episode, because there is a lot going on between them two. And I know at this point in time, it could be very annoying that Rudy still does not know who Fitz really is, aka Sylphy, and Sylphy hasn't technically revealed this, but obviously, what's going on here is that these two are slowly bonding, relearning who each other is, and it's not about kind of rushing into finding out, because once again, it goes along with the whole topic that Rudy needs someone to rely on. And in this dynamic, it's very clear that Rudy is heavily relying on Fitz in this case to be able to help him through a lot of problems. Because in this episode, it once again shows Rudy asking for help. It's like, what should I do? I wanted to check in on something. All these different type of things. For instance, in the previous episodes, he got help from Fitz or Sylphy about the teleportation incident, being able to just research things, all these little things. And it's very clear that Rudy is heavily dependent on Fitz at this moment, trying to, really depend on him, or her technically, to help out. And seeing this moment, it's very powerful because it showcases that Rudy is trying to become comfortable with this individual. And seeing, Fitz, or Sylphy in this case, going out of their way to help out Rudy, even if, there is some questionable things that happen, in her own way, it shows her stance as a character. For instance, if we remember the origin story of these two characters, they met thanks to bullying. For instance, Sylphy was bullied, and Rudy came in and saved the day. And obviously they re-met again in this season thanks to Rudy was getting bullied, and then Fitz comes in and saves the day. And this entire episode, you could kind of say, has themes of bullying and all that. Like, the Dedoldia was bullying Zenoba, broke his belonging, didn't care and respect about their belongings, all these little things. They had this air of delinquency, and they were not listening to reason. So, obviously, Rudy stepped in, and Fitz has now stepped in, and they're just trying to make sure that the elements of what happened to Zenoba never happens again in their own way. So it showcases that Fitz or Sylphy is on Rudy's side no matter what, to be able to back him up, and it showcases her kind of roller dynamic as a character, even though Rudy is clearly relying on Fitz or Sylphy to overcome certain issues. So they're both equivalent exchange with what they are doing for each other. Now, besides that, we do need to talk about the beginning of the episode and the POV of Sylphy, which I discussed in my video 2 days ago. I talked about just like how Sylphy most likely might be having a POV episode. And this is something that is a heavily debated topic in the Mushoku Tensei community, because the anime isn't perfect. No anime is perfect, and if there is one element that isn't perfect for MT, it is definitely the POVs, because there's a lot of content when it comes to changing the perspective to another character that is cut from the anime. And it's understandable to a certain degree, maybe for pacing and all of that. Not everything could stay in. There's a lot of reasons for it. But it's really nice to see a Sylphy POV at the beginning of this episode, showcasing a few things about her lifestyle. For instance, she wakes up, she doesn't have, let's say, Fitz gear on, just straight up in a nightgown, so to speak. She has a morning routine of going out and exercising, and the reason why she's exercising is because she wants to stay healthy, but also she believes that Rudy would do the exact same thing, which we do know he does. And then everything about the way she presents herself within this episode, kind of navigating around the town, learning the different ways. It's to help her, identity as Fitz, to be able to help out the princess, but also help her to be able to just navigate through town and have a alone time, so to speak, as, Sylphy instead of Fitz. Now, also I want to talk about her hat design. I absolutely love this hat design. I really hope we get to see more of this hat in the future episodes. I did not realize a hat on Sylphy covering her ears and all that would look just so good, but somehow it does. Easily my favorite design so far of, Sylphy, and like I said, I need more of this. This is really good. But yeah, I really enjoyed the POV perspective of her. This was nice. We need more content like that. We need more content of Sylphy, actually having a POV, or more characters having POV within the series. But overall, the episode of Mushoku Tensei was legitimately good. I do hope that this episode doesn't have any toxicity from it. I hope for the author's sake that this is the last part we're going to hear about it, and, he's not going to have, hit pieces put after him by, like, Anime News Network again, because it's crazy. They did, like, 2 to 3, like, posts on him, and it's just, wow. It's disgusting. And I can't believe it, man. I legit can't believe that. But, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I enjoyed this episode. Be safe, stay healthy. If you enjoyed the video, do leave me a like. It does help me out a lot. Allows more of my videos to appear in your YouTube feed. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed already. And, Chibi out.